Dear friends, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all today to celebrate the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Today's online Gandhi Katha by the eminent Gandhian scholar Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna is part of the commemorative celebrations of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. I convey my thanks to Dr. Shobhana for connecting to the viewers of Switzerland virtually. She is a globally renowned Gandhian who has been making invaluable contribution to literature, to social service, and to spreading the vision of Mahatma Gandhi. She is the chief functionary of the Gandhian Forum for Ethical Corporate Governance and has also regularly addressed young probationers of the Indian Civil Services. Gandhi Katha is an activity that has been recommended by the National Committee, which is headed by Honorable President of India. The committee has been constituted for commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi at national and international level in order to propagate his message. This committee includes Honorable Vice President, Honorable Prime Minister, Chief Ministers of all states of the country, representatives from across the political spectrum, Gandhians, thinkers, and eminent persons from all walks of life. We wanted to have the physical presence of Dr. Shobhana in Switzerland. However, due to COVID-19 situation, she has been conducting e-sessions to narrate Gandhi Katha and promote Gandhian values in various countries. Dear friends, the commemorative celebrations of Gandhi at 150 in Switzerland carries immense significance from historical perspective. The Nobel Prize-winning French writer Romain Rolland had written a biography of Gandhi called Mahatma Gandhi, the man who became one with the universal being. That was published in 1924. Mahatma Gandhi visited him in December 1931 and was his guest in Berne. Last year, a bust of Mahatma Gandhi was installed in Berne during the state visit of the Honorable President of India to Switzerland. The President of India said, Mahatma Gandhi believed in the oneness of humanity. He embraced all cultures and all peoples. He listened to Hindu religious songs and Western classical music with equal ease and understanding. The Embassy of India in Berne celebrated the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi during 2018, 19, and 20, and conducted a series of events in Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and the Holy See. Two prominent personalities, His Excellency Alain Berset, as the President of the Swiss Confederation, and Professor Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, wrote their anthologies on what Gandhi means to me. 150 messages of Mahatma Gandhi were tweeted by the embassy in 4 different languages: English, German, French, and Italian, as part of the celebrations. My Life is My Message digital exhibition and LED projection were released on 2nd October in 2018 and thereafter widely shown during various events. A set of 7 commemorative stamps on Mahatma Gandhi were released on 2nd October 2018. Besides, a special commemorative postal stamp was released by Liechtenstein Post in October 2019. Vaishnav Janto Bhajan was recorded and filmed in the scenic Alps of Switzerland and Liechtenstein. These videos are still a major attraction in all our events. A joint philately exhibition was organized by the Mission and the Universal Postal Union in Berne. A panel discussion on relevance of Mahatma Gandhi in the contemporary world was also held at the UPU premises in Berne on 2nd October. An exclusive Khadi exhibition was displayed at various events in 2018 and 2019. Sri Ravi Shankar delivered a talk in Berne last year on peace and mindfulness to pay tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. The embassy organized a bicycle ride and tree plantation events in Berne in June 2019. A major event was held on 1st October 2019 on fraternal love and non-violence for global harmony and peace at the Pontifical Council for Inter-Religious Dialogue at the Vatican City. A grand finale is planned in Berne on 2nd October this year, which will have limited physical participation in view of the COVID situation. Dear friends, Mahatma Gandhi pioneered and practiced the principles of satyagraha and non-violence. While leading India's national freedom movement and a number of social reform campaigns, Mahatma Gandhi successfully applied these principles and practices. Gandhian philosophy is boundless. The various facets of Gandhian philosophy can enable the resolution of various contemporary issues. Through the Gandhi Katha today, we will get an insight into Mahatma Gandhi's practical way of life, his guiding philosophy, and we will learn how to remain positive under all circumstances, including during the current global pandemic. I conclude my remarks with a famous quote of Albert Einstein on Mahatma Gandhi. I quote, "Generations to come, it may well be, will scarcely believe that such a man as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth." Unquote. I once again thank you all and once again welcome Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Ambassador Srimati Monica Kapil Mohtaji, for your kind message and support. Namaskar and welcome to the Gandhi Katha, story of Mahatma Gandhi, narrated by me during the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, his wife. Kasturba Gandhi's sacrifice, suffering, and the contribution into making Mohan into the Mahatma and inspiring thousands of women to fight for justice and against racial discrimination in South Africa and in the non-violent freedom struggle in India is extraordinary. I express gratitude to the Embassy of India, Bern, in Switzerland, for hosting the Gandhi Katha amidst these challenging times to learn from Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence, and purity of means. His spirituality, his environmental credo, and his practices of health and wellness of body, mind, and spirit for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the entire humanity. On October 2nd, the world celebrates the UN International Day of Nonviolence. And in India, we celebrate the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi as Gandhi Jayanti. The entire world is remembering Mahatma Gandhi, the apostle of peace and nonviolence. We have an opportunity to remind the humanity of the efficacy of the messages of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation. I pay my respects to the leading lights of Switzerland and convey my warm wishes to all the people, including the Indian community members who have joined me online today. Mahatma Gandhi's name finds resonance across the continents and continues to inspire countless people through his teachings of nonviolence. India and Switzerland have had cordial and friendly relations since India's independence, based on shared values of democracy and rule of law. India's policy of non alignment and Switzerland's traditional policy of neutrality led to a close understanding between the two countries. Gandhi Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition of Katha or storytelling with hymns and narration. I have given talks on Gandhi Katha in more than 100 countries hosted by the Indian missions during the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Gandhiji. In all the countries, people have great reverence and respect for Mahatma Gandhi. Many have been inspired by him to take up the cudgels against injustice through non-violence. Others have followed his environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by his simple, frugal spiritual life. The humanism of the world's thought leaders are so deeply reflected in Mahatma Gandhi's teachings. The new generation is eager to understand more about this greatest man of the last century who remains such a huge impact, who made such a huge impact on humanity and inspired many world leaders. Gandhiji used to begin and end his day with prayers. These were prayers from all the religions of the world. Sarva Dharma Prarthana. Gandhiji's internal core comprised of the essence of all the religions, one that he had acquired from long study and reflection. The devotional poetry of the saint poets that he had heard, sung, and absorbed since childhood made up a significant part of the life of his soul. He said that ultimately all the religions point to the same truth of compassion, love, forgiveness, and tolerance, and that everyone must study the essence of all the religions in an attitude of perfect reverence and must have friendship and respect for the practitioners of different religions and diverse cultures. All of Gandhiji's friends were from different religions and cultural backgrounds from around the world, and he actively encouraged friendships across religions. One of the legacies that Mahatma Gandhi has given to the world is nonviolent conflict resolution through interfaith dialogue to establish harmony, unity, and brotherhood. In the ashram prayers in the morning and evening, the first shlok from the Ishopanishad, the shortest Upanishad from India, used to be sung. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridha kasya svidhanam. That everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing really belongs to us. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non-attachment. Enjoy it with a feeling of sacrifice, taking to the extent that is necessary for you, and leave the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to us. So I will play the Gandhi Katha Dhun, which expresses the same sentiment of renounce and rejoice, according to which Mahatma Gandhi led his entire life in the form of a song. Even after 7 decades have gone by since Gandhiji passed on, in every part of the world, his resonance is felt as strongly as ever before, and his visions and actions are of an enduring significance for all times and places. His approach to life was holistic and cannot be divided into watertight compartments of social, religious, political, personal, or public life. Gandhiji stands out as the champion not only of political democracy but also of economic and spiritual democracy in today's world. He believed that moral degeneration is the root cause of all evils, including conflicts. This explains his lifelong crusade of attainment of moral values such as truthfulness, nonviolence, purity of means, love, self control, forgiveness, respect, friendliness, compassion, mercy, and so on. The principle of Satyagraha for Gandhiji was by non cooperation with evil through the moral values of love force, truth force, soul force, through self sacrifice and suffering. For him, the consideration for the sufferings of fellow human beings was of paramount importance. His belief and actions that social change for establishing justice and dignity of humans is both less harmful and more sustainable when achieved by non-violent means. His legacy of Satyagraha is widely recognized and practiced the world over and is seen in many moments for civil rights even till today. Gandhiji's environmental practices or the environmental credo were based on conservation of natural resources by reusing, recycling, reducing, and refusing. And these natural resources are often misused and overused for the sake of development. Gandhiji had warned about the unsustainability of wasting natural resources or overusing the resources on the global scale and had said that greed will be the main reason for the environmental degradation and the ecological crisis. He had predicted this a century ago. Gandhiji was the first environmentalist much before the entire world was preoccupied by the concerns of environment and ecology, and with his stunning premonition and knowledge, he had declared that the earth has enough for man's needs, but not for man's greed. He had also said, the earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we have to hand it over to them as it was handed over to us. Equality for women within the society was a principle Gandhiji passionately believed in. His vision of Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, becomes very relevant in the crisis of internally displaced people and migrants. It may well have been thought, keeping in mind the very basic unit of human organization, a village or a county. His vision of Gram Swaraj, which is a self reliant, independent, self governed village built on the premises of sustainable development and growth, is the need of the hour. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Mahatma Gandhi was in his faith in God. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. The faith gave him the constant awareness that he was to be nothing but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. And that was the path on which hundreds of world teachers had already walked. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards to find inspiration through self introspection, self examination, and self purification. That he did by repeated questioning, and that question was, Ko aham, who am I? What am I? And what is the real purpose of my life? This question has been asked in our ancient Indian civilization since the past 5,000 years. The answer came to Gandhiji by listening to his inner voice that the purpose of life was to serve others. The deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor for Mahatma Gandhi. He said truth is God, Satya hi Parmeshwar hai. Faith in truth led Mahatma Gandhi to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, then truth is omnipresent too. If each human being were an aspect of God, then each person is capable of being truthful, of being good, and doing good to others. The second realization was that in spite of all the upheavals in the history of humankind, Humanity will only progress in an auspicious direction because truth, that is God, is only interested in the welfare of its creation. His endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it and to nurture it. This is why he could feel oneness with everyone. For most of us, this realization does not set in easily. But because of this understanding of oneness, Gandhiji had no enemies. He did not want to settle scores with anyone, and he did not want to take any revenge. He merely wanted to extend his love, compassion, and respect with everyone. And that was one of his main traits. He respected individuals as individuals without attaching labels. That was another trait that we see in Gandhiji. He remained forever positive and calm under all the challenging circumstances. And he had faced many, many challenging circumstances, but he never lost his composure or balance of mind. That is one more trait. And the other, we see that he was ever vigilant and used to work for 18 to 20 hours, not for money, not for position, not for power, but selflessly without attachment and possession. And that was one of his traits. The other trait is that he treated all work as God given work and did every task with equal reverence. These are a few of Gandhiji's traits, and there are so many from which we can learn and transform our lives because ultimately Gandhiji was an ordinary person like you and me. So, with his own determination, he was able to transform himself, and this way is his way. Robert Roland, the famous French writer and pacifist, had won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He had written the biography of Mahatma Gandhi in 1924, and that helped in introducing Gandhiji to Europe. Both of them corresponded ever since. He wrote Gandhi's biography, as I said, during his return journey from London in 1931. Gandhiji was eager to meet this sage of Europe. Rolla also hungered to meet Gandhiji. It was Rolla who had introduced Madeleine Slade to Gandhiji. She was the daughter of the Navy Admiral in London and was deeply interested in the music of Beethoven. When Madeleine Slade came to meet Rolla, he spoke to her about Gandhi. Of course, she had not even heard about Gandhi's name then. Romeo's one sentence changed the course of her life. He said of Gandhi, he is another Christ. So Madeleine Slade wrote to Gandhiji, who told her to wait for a year and later on went to India. And Gandhiji gave her the name of Meera Bahan. In December 1931, Gandhiji spent 5 days in Villeneuve and they discussed about the moral and social state of continental Europe, especially after the Great War. Both of them met over 5 days, talking about the future of civilization. One side represented faith, the other side upheld logical analysis. Rolla spoke about the war mongering nationalism and its links with business internationalism. He was certain that the masses need to be aroused against exploitation of the rest of the world through nonviolence applied in the absolute and uncompromising spirit represented by Gandhi in India. More than contradicting each other, their relationship was complementary. In this sense, they were not really engaged in a debate, but a communion of sorts. On the last evening, after the prayers, Gandhiji asked Rolla to play him a little of Beethoven, and Rolla played him the Andante of the Fifth Symphony. Later, in his letter to an American friend, Rolla wrote, and I quote, "This little man is so fragile in appearance. His tireless and fatigue is a word that does not exist in his vocabulary. He could calmly answer for hours without a muscle of face twitching. His mind proceeds through successive experiments into action, and he follows a straight line, but he never stops." During that same time, Gandhiji met Pierre Cerisole, the great pacifist leader. Gandhiji had heard about Cerisole's movement, but desired to hear from the man himself. Pierre told him that during the war, a village schoolmaster had refused to serve his 3 months as conscript in the name of Christ. For this, He was first put in a lunatic asylum and then in the prison. Pierre was deeply impressed by this act and followed the same path. Many others followed Cerisole's example, and each year many men refused the conscription service. Cerisole told Gandhiji that all wanted to serve as citizens, but not as army men. Gandhiji told him about his experience in South Africa and India. Cerisole said, I am afraid our people in Europe are not like yours in India and are not ready for such acts as these. There was a pause, and then, in a low and infinitely gentle voice, as though sorry for the terrific rebuke that he was implying, Gandhiji said, Are you sure it is the people who are not ready, Mr. Cerisole? Oh, exclaimed Pierre, and we were all silent, accepting the challenge, wrote Muriel Lester, Gandhiji's host in London, who was with him at that time and was a witness to this conversation. I see what you mean. You are right. It is we who are failing. It is leadership that we lack. Is that what you mean? In the same small voice, Gandhiji answered. I must confess, Mr. Cerisole, I do not seem to have come across leaders in Europe, not of the sort that the times call for. Tell us what qualities you think a leader for this age would need, Pierre argued. Realization of God every minute of 24 hours, announced Gandhiji. And if a man asked, What do you mean by God? Asked Pierre. Gandhiji replied, I would answer, Truth is God, and the way to find Him is non-violence. A leader must have complete mastery over himself. Anger must be banished, and fear and falsehood. You must lose yourself. I tell you, if all the world denied God, I should be his sole witness. Now I will play Gandhi Katha hymn in Hindi, which elaborates on Gandhiji's definition of truth as having harmony between thought, words, and deed.
मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तुझको मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तुझको जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तुझको जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तुझको ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू बोल जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू बोल ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा
Gandhiji is the greatest apostle of peace the world has seen in the recent past. His notion of peace is focused on tolerance, forgiveness, compassion, oneness, truth force, love force, and soul force through self suffering and sacrifice to melt the hearts of the hardest adversaries. He was the conscience keeper of humanity. That his ideas will be an inspiration to us, both as individuals and as a society, is beyond any doubt. He was an epoch maker, one who could sow the seeds for the next generation from the fruits of the previous one. Gandhiji is the most powerful visionary and a practical idealist from the first half of the last century, whose life is a role model for us all. But the effort has to begin from a point where you're standing. That is what made all Mahatma Gandhi's idealist actions practical, and he can be truly called a man of action. But it does not only mean he was very busy. What we mean is the action of putting ideas or beliefs into practice more than anything else was the driving force in his life. The answer for Mahatma Gandhi was always found in action. He had said, an ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching. Mahatma Gandhi has made significant and seminal contributions that span across such disciplines as environment, economics, spirituality, conflict resolution, international peace, civil rights, social reforms, education, society, politics, and many more fields. At that time, the most harmful and destructive impact on the world was that of imperialism, modern industrialization, violence, war, materialism, and the greed for controlling the world. In my opinion, Mahatma Gandhi's life left the most powerful and strong imprint on the humanity of the world. He had said, "My life is my message," and that message he gave by living it, and even much, much before that through his writings of Hind Swaraj. John Haynes Holmes was a pacifist, an anti war activist, and the founder of American Civil Liberties Union. He had met Gandhiji in London in 1931 and later in Delhi in 1947. He found Mahatma Gandhi's presence, those bright eyes shining through his spectacles, his voice so clear and yet so gentle, his whole presence so simple and yet so strong. He said, and I quote, "I believe that he is unquestionably the greatest man living in the world today. When I think of Gandhi, I think of Jesus Christ." So I will play the Gandhi Katha dhun in Hindi about Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence, purity of means that combine together in the form of Satyagraha.
लागी रे लगन लागी रे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन लागी रे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा सत्य अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन लागी लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन.
In 1904, in South Africa, after reading John Ruskin's book Unto This Last, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi transformed his life overnight and started leading a community life of voluntary poverty, self-control, bread labor, and Sarvodaya, welfare of all. He established 4 ashrams in his lifetime, 2 in South Africa called Phoenix Settlement in 1904 and Tolstoy Farm in 1910, and 2 ashrams in India, Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad in Gujarat in 1917 and the Sevagram Ashram in Wardha, Maharashtra in 1936, where Kasturba Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi and the ashram community lived in poverty like the common villagers of India. This was his ideal of a non-violent face-to-face society for Sarvodaya, the welfare for all, and carrying out constructive programs, which is his second gift to humanity, the first gift being Satyagraha. Gandhiji's ashrams had a mingling of political and spiritual aims. It was a practical laboratory for transforming ordinary men and women into extraordinary seekers and satyagrahis, for offering the highest sacrifice of their lives in the non-violent freedom struggle on one hand, and to get involved in the constructive programs to serve the poorest of the poor by establishing their self-respect and dignity. And these were places where he practiced self-reliance, swavalamban, cleanliness, swachhata, service to humanity, seva, for realizing his vision of village republic or Gram Swaraj. I'm happy to inform you that I was born in his last ashram in Sevagram. My father was inspired by Gandhiji since his childhood and joined the non-violent freedom struggle in India and lived in the Sevagram ashram. The life and thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi are intertwined and inseparable. His politics was imbued with his spiritual experiments, and his spirituality was tempered by his vision of a non-violent society and his constructive work was integral to his politics. The unique practices of Mahatma Gandhi, his control of palate, his fast, his spinning, his silence, and his prayers, gave him the internal strength, and they were as much a part of his politics as of his spiritual life. These practices and experiments were sustained and nurtured by the community in the ashrams. The ashram community, through its own practices, affirmed, modified, and validated Gandhiji's ideals and practices and continues to do so even till today. This shows the relevance of his practices. Gandhiji carried out all his experiments in health and wellness in the ashram through nature cure, diet control, fasting, hydrotherapy, sun bath, mud packs, and observing silence for one whole day. Our friend and the British Quaker, Sir Horace Alexander, lived in Gandhiji's ashrams for some time, and he noticed that the bell used to ring 56 times during the day in the ashrams. He said, and I quote, Gandhi had wonderful courtesy and punctuality. I was to learn quickly that he was the slave of watch. He had more to do in every 24 hours than almost any other man. So he had learned how to pack the most into every minute. Yet he never gave the impression of being hurried and impatient. And this is the one lesson everyone must learn from Gandhiji of being punctual, prompt, and disciplined. He has given three gifts to humanity. The first one is Satyagraha, second one is constructive programs, and the third one is Ekadasha Vrata or the 11 observances, which were a set of rules formed by him for the ashram community for spiritual progress and voluntary self control. The principle behind the Ekadasha Vrata was to do unto others what you want them to do unto you. Ivan Illich, the Croatian Austrian philosopher, had come to Sevagram Ashram in 1978 and stayed there for a week. And he sat in Bapu Kuti or the cottage of Mahatma Gandhi every day for a long time and said, and I quote, this hut of Mahatma Gandhi demonstrates to the world how the dignity of the common man can be brought up. It is also a symbol of happiness which we can derive from practicing the principles of simplicity, service, and truthfulness. Now I'll play the Gandhi Katha dhun, which explains Gandhiji's philosophy of Satya hi Parameshwar hai, truth is God.
आँखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आँखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, आँखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आँखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल.
Gandhiji's role and contributions to the political arena are well known. What is less known is his contribution towards health and well-being. Gandhiji was a firm believer in the principle that a healthy mind keeps the body healthy, and he stressed on the importance of a healthy lifestyle and positive thinking. His interest in health, hygiene, nutrition, and diseases was as great as his interest in politics. Gandhiji was essentially a man of science. He approached problems in a scientific manner. Gandhiji's message to the world on the vital question of health and well-being is very important. To him, the study of this question was part of the service to God and His creation, which was his mission. Knowing to care summed up his life. His message was simple and easy to follow. It encouraged everyone to respect simplicity, voluntary self-control, reduce the wants, follow the tradition, cultural practices and the values, follow the environmental credo, and treat oneself through nature cure for living in harmony with nature. For Gandhiji, the outside universe was but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in the atom. There is not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual spiritual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide of conduct in the daily affairs of man. The Sanskrit proverb Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande says, "You are the universe within the universe. As with the self, so is the universe. What is going on within you is same as what is going on in the universe." From the mind-body perspective, Gandhi's standpoint was that health is an optimal integration of body, mind, spirit, and soul and environment. Environment is our extended body. Very few people know that as a couple, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely 123 years ago to public health emergencies, service of patients during all kinds of disasters, selflessly in the service of humanity. When they came to India and there was a pandemic of Spanish flu influenza in 1918, Gandhiji opened up his Sabarmati ashram as a quarantine center, treated and served patients through nature cure, provided simple vegetarian diet to boost immunity and maintain physical distancing. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi took care of the families of the patients, looked after their physical, mental, and spiritual needs, and gave them correct information, helped them to remain positive through prayer, meditation, and chanting, and taking care of each other during the time of the pandemic. Gandhiji had said on 10th November 1918, "Our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them, even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self restraint, Sanyam, or of imposing a limit on our acts, wants, and desire." In August 1942, Gandhiji wrote the book Key to Health, in which he wrote that anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or vaidyas or the traditional health practitioners from day to day. Today, the world is facing three kinds of crises globally. First is the COVID 19 pandemic, the second is the serious and long drawn financial crisis, and the third is the ecological crisis, which is impacting everyone. We have to look for answers somewhere within ourselves by learning from the life of Mahatma Gandhi, who had said, "My life is my message." The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected. And soon the community is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this anubandha, this interconnectedness that sustains all life on earth. We are all in this together as one human family, as brothers and sisters. Whether we choose to see it or not, only have one home, this planet Earth, our Mother Earth. Our ancient sages and seers have always looked upon us as Vishwamanava, global citizens, and said that the world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The current COVID 19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. We will have to learn to live with COVID 19 now and in the future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just have to get inspired from the life of Mahatma Gandhi to make the necessary changes in thoughts, actions, and conduct for coping up physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this is the future that the COVID 19 pandemic is pointing out to us if we observe carefully. But if we still return to the normal standard of finding happiness by chasing after money, power, position, lifelong consumerism, then COVID 19 has given us the wake up call. This kind of life of empty consumerism and mass distractions has only increased the difference between the rich and the poor, created the huge carbon footprint, increased the misery of the invisible poor masses. When a crisis makes you feel stressed, Meditation, prayer, and Ramanama or chanting relieves the stress response. Fear and anxiety are forms of stress that become exaggerated when events become uncertain, when you feel a loss of control over the situation. And when the stress keeps repeating itself without let up, the thinking mind reacts to all of these conditions. It always has, even in normal times. But a crisis brings stress into high relief, making it very capable of lowering the immune systems of our bodies and causing inflammatory diseases. Decades ago, stress was classified as epidemic of modern life. The Gandhian way of life is the best guide to practicing the coping mechanism that induces relaxation, fearlessness, calmness, inner peace, absence of anxiety, and remaining positive. Therefore, Mahatma Gandhi is the greatest healer and the wellness guru who is available to us at all times and in all ages. The Gandhian principles of freedom from fear and care for all is a perfect prescription in the times of crisis. Gandhiji's emphasis on healthy lifestyle, positive thinking, empowerment for self care, and care in the community would make perfect sense. I once again take this opportunity to thank the Indian Mission for hosting the Gandhi Katha. My special thanks are to all of you who have joined me online. I will end with the peace benediction in Sanskrit for the universal welfare. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let all be happy, let all be healthy. Let all experience auspiciousness. Let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om, peace, peace, peace. With Gandhiji's blessings, who had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light, I will end with the Gandhi Katha hymn, Shubhamangal Ho. May there be auspicious good. May there be good. May the earth be auspicious. May the sky be auspicious. May every particle on earth be auspicious.
Gari Mangala Ho,